Hey everybody, hey, this is Kameel from the Rig on Wheel Show, and we got Pierson. Happy Tuesday, everybody. This is the last Tuesday of September, and I hear it is fall, but it's extended summer here in Texas.
Yeah, it depends on where you are. As we did the startup in Columbus, the leaves were already changing.
Yeah.
I'll be up in Portland, Maine later on this week, and I'm sure it's going to feel significantly cooler than it is here. I think the high tomorrow up there is supposed to be 62.
Yeah. Well, I could take 62. That's a nice degree.
I don't want winter weather from Portland, Maine down here in Houston.
No, I'm not ready for winter, but 62 is okay. But welcome to the Rig on Wheel Show, everybody. We do this every Tuesday. So welcome to the Rig on Wheel Show. We are the first and only truck driver recruiting show. So we are here to share truck driving insights, news, your hot jobs, recruiting tips. So we're here to make history. And what I want to do is just jump right into the news.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'll go with fuel. Fuel started up for the first time. It went up in price first the last 11 weeks in a row, slightly uphill, 1.3 cents on diesel at 353.9. Again, that's 11 weeks in a row. It went down before finally going up. Gasoline also went up half a cent at 118.5. So you will notice that at the pumps, generally speaking, fuel surcharge is a lagging indicator. So you'll start to see a lot of those business savvy owner operators slow down a little bit, try and nurse that fuel surcharge for all that it's worth if they're dealing with direct customers. Yeah. Doesn't apply so much to the spot market when it's an all-in rate. But with that said, at 353, it at least stabilized. I get nervous when it goes week after week after week. The economy's definitely been impacted, though, and fuel's one of those leading indicators. Speaking of leading indicators, I know you have the spot market rates.
Yeah, I do. So we're talking about week 37. So we did see like a 20% increase for when we talk about the load to truck availability. So things are starting to look up a little bit. I don't want to get too happy too fast.
No, and we got to remember the week before was impacted by Labor Day.
Yeah.
So that's partially people and loads returning back into the normal routine. I think we won't know what that 20% means until 2-3 weeks from now as far as what that goes on.
That's very true. So dry van, which is your neck of the woods, we're looking at $1.87. Flatbed is $2.22. We can play that dollar straight at the lottery machine. And then reefer is $2.31. So your load to ratio is 3 or 4 to 1. Reefer is 5.7, and flat is 10 to 1. So definitely is competitive market for the drivers and things like that, but it definitely is time to capitalize on stuff when it comes to the carriers.
Yeah. Now I will say this: if you look at the ATA for hire truck tonnage index rose 1.8% to 115.8 from the prior month. So we have seen overall in the last month, freight has increased. We'll hopefully see a recovery on that end. It's hard really to know. If you look at it, a lot of the leading hedge fund and investment banks are saying that the chances of a recession this year are about 35% and 45% going into 2025. Now, the key thing to remember when they say that there's going to be a recession is you don't know that until it's already happened. A recession is defined as 3 quarters in a row of stymied or negative growth in the economy. So when they say there was a recession, you don't know it till after the fact, because you can go back and go, we've had 3 quarters of negative growth. So when they say that there's a 45% chance of a recession in 2025, it means that it took place back in 2024, which is kind of a key thing to remember on that stat. So we'll have to see what that means, because 45% still not the majority, but it's also not good. And of course, we saw rates in interest rates decrease for the first time in almost 4 years when the Fed decreased the rate for the first time.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying too bad it wasn't sooner, but I guess we'll always say too bad it wasn't sooner for something.
Yeah.
So that's for sure. Also, the FMCSA put out a press release on the 20th, and of course that was before the podcast show. But I did want to talk about this because the FMCSA is now investing $140 million. When we talk about during the Biden and Harris administration right now, they're putting out $140 million investment to strengthen CDL programs. So that is huge. That is very huge. And what it's for is to broaden and to increase qualified drivers to be on the road. That's going to mean shorter CDL wait times, processing, all of that, and also help us be able on the recruiter and carrier side when it comes to market advanced technology improvements, key moments for ramping up recruitment efforts and stuff like that to be able to tap into. What I'm liking as far as what's going on with the FMCSA is a lot more synergy for clarity and communication.
Yep.
Transparency that we have not, I'm going to throw this out here, ever seen in our industry. And I'm liking that, because what we do see is a lot of regulation just thrown out there, and it's not connected to anything. When you say, but now I'm okay with regulation if it's meaningful and it's connected to something and it's an actual check and balances. So that this is good. I'm liking this. They're actually doing something about it. They have 2 grant breakdowns that are high priority when it comes to deploying new technologies to improve commercial operations, commercial vehicle operations, and implementing for CDL grant programs for safety and compliance. So that's huge, because that hits on retention and turnover, whether it be at the carriers, but more importantly, if they're not coming or staying in the industry, they can't come to a carrier or even stay at a carrier. So I like that. What were you about to say?
I would say the big news on my end is House Committee approves moving protection bill. So one of the things that's interesting in our industry is the shipper and the carrier relationship. There's a certain level of accountability there, because if I'm moving freight for Lowe's, as an example, I want to move freight again and again and again. The problem is when you move a house, as an example, you're literally moving one load and they may never talk to you again. So you don't have a lot of protections there. The drivers in that area that work for Grable, United, and a lot of the household movers, very professional. Your fly-by-night companies that do a lot of these household moves. So if Kameel's moving freight from her house to an apartment, there's not a lot of accountability there. And theoretically, they can hold your load hostage and make you pay more money. Because what are you going to do about it? There's not you're not providing any other loads. And so one of the things that's happening right now, big story right now, House Committee approves moving protection bill. Essentially, what it would create is accountability through the FMCSA on that. So that if you have this, there's a documented agency that protects the rate that you're quoted, you paid at the quote there. And so that's what's eating up my mind at this moment here. Is that's an interesting thing. It's a niche. Some of the hardest working drivers in this industry is household movers. If you think how unpleasurable it is to move your own stuff, imagine doing it for people that you don't know. This is good for the driver. This is good for the person moving in and out of their house. Most of those drivers are out on the road sometimes 9 months at a time. Now, they make really good money. The challenge is that driver gets between a rock and a hard place as a shipper, as a carrier plays a game with the person. And in this case, the shipper, the individual who has no leverage, it puts a driver in an awkward spot. So the ATA and the FMCSA is looking at that. Most likely, we're seeing a bill in early 2025.
Wow. And I'm in between a move right now, and I'm not moving city to city, and it's still a lot.
Oh, it still is. I can tell you that we moved from El Paso to DFW, and I can tell you that we looked at, now part of that is going into a market and out of the market. So if you're moving out of California, the rate's sky high.
Mm-hmm.
If you're moving into California, the rate's super low because of supply and demand going in either direction. A lot of people move into Houston metro area. A lot of people move into Dallas. So El Paso to Dallas would have still been about $30,000, and that's an intrastate move.
Right. That's
And then all of a sudden, if they take your load, they take your house, basically your belongings, and go, it's actually going to be 35. You don't have a lot of leverage in that scenario because I'm not providing the next load. And so theoretically, they can hold you hostage. And there has been stories of that taking place.
Jeez, that's just a lot. Could you all imagine?
Oh, and the driver, look, most of your big companies do not engage in this, but your smaller companies or agents that do put the driver in an awkward position because they essentially create the driver to being a hostage with your personal belongings. The driver does not understand that that's taking place. They just know they can't deliver yet. So they think it's the person at their house. It's normally not. It's that person coming back going, it's not 30, it's now 35 after they've taken it. It doesn't exist in the world with Lowe's or Walmart or Home Depot because there's already that bond in place that I want another load from you. They don't have that with you. You don't have another load. This is your one move. Unless you have 8 different houses that I don't know about, your one load is this one load. And so it's one of those areas of the industry that is definitely still very 1980s-ish, kind of a shady part of the industry. It's why Grable and United Van Lines and some of those companies got so big so quick because they realized if we conduct business correctly, we will have repeat business. You might not move with us, but you'll tell your friend, you'll tell your relative, your uncle, your aunt. But there's a lot of these agents and people, quite frankly, under somebody else's umbrella that will do this type of stuff that's quite predatory. So the FMCSA and ATA are looking to crack down on that.
Wow. You never even think about that because that's not even
unless you're moving.
Unless you're moving, that's not even a part of the industry.
And you have no leverage in that scenario because they're not coming back for another load. So once they get your household belongings, traditionally, we don't deal with it in most of trucking because I want another load from you. So if you're Lowe's, I'm going to do right by you because you're going to give me another load and another and another. That's not the case in that environment. There's not a lot of regulatory pressure over that, but that's where the House is working on that presently. Wow.
I like that. I like how all of this is starting to come together.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens when the shortage and all type of crazy stuff happens.
Yeah.
They got to figure it out.
I'd love for it to be calm times to figure it out, but we got to get past the election. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, got to get past it. Well, we always talk about cargo theft and all of that. So I want to kind of take it south of the border. And let's take it to Mexico a little bit. And I do want to put this into a little bit of perspective. But there has been some organized crime groups in Mexico behind sharp increases of cargo theft, with 140 incidents in August 2024 alone. Now, that sounds like a lot, but that's a whole country. To be honest, that really ain't shit.
So it's still technically a lot.
That's a lot, but not really. Hell, we talked about 140.
Yeah, but
last month.
It depends on what's on the trailer. So you got to keep in mind, some loads, as far as actual freight on the trailer, may be as cheap as $10,000. Some loads may have $800,000 worth of goods on the trailer.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So part of why we're able to move 450 to 500 loads a day across the border, and why customers seek us out, is the security of knowing their load's going to get there and it's going to get there safely.
You need safety.
And there is a whole network in place. It goes from everything from the driver on the Mexican side of the border being properly vetted, having facilities that are secure and in low-risk areas. It is having expertise on Mexico, just like the U.S. In Mexico, you have to have the same expertise on where freight goes, where trailers go, tracking your equipment. I cannot emphasize how important enough is that you track your trailers and your equipment and your freight. And then once it crosses the border, having just the processes in place to go through that process, get it across the border safely, and then on to its final destination.
Right.
So when people ask how many loads we do, people within the industry, when I say it's 500 loads a day, there's a lot of moving parts and expertise that allow that to happen. And so it's one of the things as we talk more about near sourcing and more of this freight coming from China, now coming from Mexico. It takes those facilities about 4 years from first concept to actual stakes in the ground to being a worthwhile DC. And then when a lot of carriers you're going to see over the next 4 to 5 years decide we want to get into the near sourcing game. And it is not as simple as it sounds.
No.
It's the infrastructure, it's the personnel, the expertise, the understanding of Mexico and where a good location is, a bad location, freight levels. You will see a lot of new players getting near sourcing and they will struggle.
Yeah.
And it's not because of lack of effort or resources. It's going to be a lack of knowledge.
And their entire supply chain is going to be threatened because of the lack of knowledge, because it's not going to work the same as here in the United States.
Yeah.
It's just like going to Canada. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Everything is different. The threat of anything is different. But you and I were talking, it's a lot safer now than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah. We're based in El Paso. We're opposite of the border of Juarez. 15 years ago, I'm probably not going to have lunch down in Juarez. Now I will take relatives with me and we'll go have a nice lunch and maybe catch a show or something down in Juarez and come back very nonchalantly. And at Christmas time, people from Chihuahua make their way up to El Paso and go shopping at Walmart because they view it as a luxury good. That probably did not happen 15 years ago. Now, there's still areas that are concerning, but that's where that knowledge comes into it of, common sense. And quite frankly, what helps us is the expertise we have south of the border. We have a lot of smart people north of the border, but Miguel and a lot of the team there south of the border that we have been doing this for going on multiple decades, have experience, expertise, if you will. It is not the market you want to be a pretender in. If you know it and you have the right personnel, you're going to be wildly successful, and there is a lot of opportunity. If you don't know it and you just go, I'm going to put some equipment in trucks in Mexico and see what happens, your customers are going to be put at risk for it. And quite frankly, often personnel will be put at risk for it. But you could say that within the U.S. too.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a high percentage of cargo thefts around Memphis, as an example.
In Chicago.
And New Jersey. And it's understanding locations, having the terminal in place, the security, having the processes in place of not breaking a seal on a trailer and knowing how to have a SOP or a standard operating principle practice that you have there that make that possible.
Yeah, and I did a lot of research on this, and one thing is, even with the cargo theft, is not as violent as it once was years ago, because now majority of the cargo theft is done when it's on the highway, when it's moving. And what I mean by that is you would see the jammers on the highway. So they have technology now that will jam it. Now, it's important that if you're doing cross-border and you guys are going into Mexico, that you invest in the anti-jammers, right? So that's part of knowing the culture, knowing how to make sure that things are secure and all of that. But back in the day, they didn't have jammers. So, of course, talking about hijacking a truck was a lot more like, what is that called? That movie was
Smokey and the Bandit?
No. The movie with Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
So it was more like that. So, of course, it becomes violent at that point because it's a lot less technology into it. See, technology cuts down on violent crimes.
Oh, it does.
And it even helps the cartel.
I can tell you that knowing where your freight is and your trailers are becomes really important. And then we're fortunate. We have a lot of professional drivers down in Mexico that they bring it across the border. They bring it into the U.S. They go back home, but they bring it into the U.S. and ultimately a U.S. driver takes it to its end destination. Not many scenarios where an American driver is going into Mexico.
That's what I was about to say.
But with that said, it sounds boring and mundane, but process matters.
Yes.
And having a clear-cut, defined process of how to do that. It is not something, if you decide to get in cross-border on a whim, it is going to be very costly.
Yeah, because your same U.S. driver is not the driver that should be driving in Mexico, because it needs to be a trained driver, not because it's Mexico, but because it's two different type of countries, so it needs to be two different type of security. Because rest assured that, let's take it out from Mexico. I'm from Chicago. So when we talked about, and you got real high tech with it, I wasn't thinking high tech. I'm thinking when we're talking about driving on 63rd Street, 79th Street, for all my Chicago people, okay? 63rd Street, 79th Street, 55th Street, and you have companies that are not used to driving and moving around in Chicago. You might be an MVT and you're not used to, because you all don't do a lot of routes in Chicago.
We have local drivers though that know the market.
Okay, let's pretend you don't. Okay, this is a
Fair
pretend thing, right? And so you want to be going through those viaducts. We don't call viaducts bridges, we call them viaducts. First of all, the viaducts say X amount of feet, and they are all marked wrong. So first of all, the top of your trailer is going to be gone. Second of all, those guys know what's on their truck, even if your driver doesn't know what's on their truck. So it's very important that you have drivers, like Pierson says, that are used to the market, so they know how to watch themselves. They know what to do in certain instances, and then you are training them in-house. So things are so important to be able. Look at this. I'm about to throw something else out there for you, LinkedIn family. If you're watching from LinkedIn, this is where hiring diversity matters and hiring local matters, because it's important that where your cargo is going, those same folk are used to that area, because they are also knowing how to watch out for certain freight and the classroom training that you're giving them as well.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that we do have about 600 drivers based in El Paso, and they're extremely advantageous to us. But we have about 350 drivers based in DFW. We have a couple local drivers that specifically do those final mile moves in Chicago because they know the market. We have about 100 drivers in Houston, about 50 in Jacksonville. So we are not a one-trick pony. We do have them a big portion in El Paso, but the working skill set the drivers bring from other geographic areas end up being extremely advantageous to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a lead the other day as far as a company, and it wasn't something that served Rig on Wheels, but I knew that this company, I needed to pass this lead off to one of my recruiting partners and not the other, because the type of driver that they were needing, that one recruiting agency would have been eaten up.
Yeah.
So it's that type of thing, knowing you need people that are well-versed, open-minded, but well-versed in certain areas. So it's just so funny that you were saying that. But that's why diversity matters, and you need people of all shapes, colors, sizes, and everything sitting at the table for your Pierson has this new phone that's real fancy, so he thinks he's better than iPhone people. He is not. But what it does make me know, instead of reading my notes on my iPhone Pro Max, I will have my iPad from now on, because this is really good.
One of the things I'll bring up that I think is kind of interesting, and it's where I'm interested in how trucking falls on it. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, or DEA, has set December 2nd hearing to discuss whether reclassifying marijuana as a less dangerous drug. The challenge here is it's still an influencer. You don't want to smoke it in our industry. We're regulated by the DOT. The problem is if I don't necessarily have a view one way or the other about lowering the status of it. I think it's fair to say crack cocaine is probably worse for you than marijuana.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that out there.
Yeah. I don't think I'm rocking the boat scientifically from that standpoint,
Right.
but they're viewed the same way legally. The challenge for us as a trucking industry, though, is both are bad from a trucking standpoint. You do not want them influencing a driver in any way,
Right.
shape, or form. So the challenge right now is when you look at the drug clearinghouse, 54% of what's been hit on the clearinghouse has been marijuana. So the one thing I do worry about that as an industry is if it gets declassified or lowered in terms of its classification, if that leads to another potential wave getting hit on the clearinghouse. It's an unforeseen circumstance.
Okay, so my issue, I'm going to throw this out here. The reason why I have a problem with this, I think if you want to smoke or whatever, or even CBD, I got arthritis, so I'm all about rubbing all type of cream. However, I'm not a driver, right? So if you want to be a professional driver, then I love trucking and all of this stuff that when I was a recruiter, they call and say all this BS. If you love trucking, then do something else in the trucking industry. And the thing about it is you really don't love trucking, because if you did, you would do something else in the trucking industry where you can still have your CBD cream and all of that type of stuff. So that's just BS. And I don't like making excuses. I don't even like people that do excuses. However, what I do feel is there's some prescription drugs that people need. And I'm not saying that you don't need your marijuana, because I know I need my CBD for all of my arthritis. However, I know that means that I can't drive a truck. There are people that take other prescription drugs that they need for certain things, and they can't drive a truck either.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I think it's unfair if they start talking about lowering it and then eventually, oh, it's okay for a driver. No, it's an influencer, and they shouldn't be able to drive next to my grandson. That is, I really still feel very strongly about that. Now, do I feel that they can smoke? I think it's okay. Smoke and do something else in trucking if trucking is really what you like.
Yeah, you could say the same thing for if you want to be a pilot.
Right.
There's certain activities that you have to weigh into it. And it's why I tell people being a professional driver isn't a job, it's a lifestyle.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's not purely because of what you do behind the wheel. It's also how you conduct yourself on your time off for your 34-hour reset.
Yeah.
It's how you conduct yourself on the road in your own personal vehicle at times, because that will influence your record when you look for a driving job. So as an example, let's say you're in your own personal vehicle and you like to drive aggressively and you're the cause of a rear end collision. I have to look at that from a hiring standpoint. Insurance companies definitely look at that. You've shown a propensity for aggressive driving that ultimately led to an accident. It may not have happened in the truck, but an insurance provider is going to say that's your behavior when you drive. So one of the things that you think of it in any occupation, I always point out to people, if you got a DUI or DWI, some people, it'd be a death sentence. It literally is going to damage their ability to make a living. Your person that works as an artist in Greenwich Village and doesn't own a car, probably not going to affect much of their life. They won't. And it doesn't mean that it's fair or it's right. They live two very different worlds, and how things impact them is different. It's just one of the things you have to take into mind. It is a lifestyle. Everything that you do around that lifestyle is going to be impacted by it. But you could say that for other professions too. If you are a CFO at a major corporation, you're probably not out gallivanting on weekends and getting mugshots, because you're not going to last as a CFO at a major corporation.
And you can't have a poor credit score either.
Correct. Absolutely. And so it's one of the things to keep in mind, that in this particular profession, being behind the wheel, being coherent, being 100% mentally, physically is important.
Yep. And you heard it here, folks. So what we're going to do is come back in 2 and 2 and talk about the hot jobs.
You got to do the hand gesture.
Oh, yeah. 2 and 2.
My name is Josue Fierro, and I am a recruiter, and I've been with Mesilla Valley going on 3 years now. Before I joined the Mesilla Valley Transportation family, I was at JCU as a loan officer. I feel that I acquired some skills there, providing customer service, learning, to listen to the customer, and learning patience. I think that helped me out right now where I'm at with Mesilla Valley Transportation, because I could actually apply those skills to what I do now, which is, helping drivers, getting them behind the wheel and getting them a job. So basically what I do here in recruiting, it's something good. We for sure give jobs to drivers, so it feels good, that we help people. Communication is great there in our department, from leadership to employees. We have a good working environment there, and it feels homey. Like, it feels like a home environment. It feels a family-oriented environment. So, yeah. Yes, I acquired skills here at Mesilla Valley Transportation. One of them would be knowledge of the transportation industry. I was not aware of the transportation. I was just more into financing, and I think it's good to know that transportation takes a big role in our country, and we do something good here. What made me apply Mesilla Valley Transportation was basically word of mouth, the reputation that this company has. You see them everywhere on billboards, the trucks on the street, you hear them in the news ads. So you see Mesilla Valley Transportation everywhere, and you just hear from people here, local people saying that Mesilla Valley is great, it's a great company to work for, and I was excited to join. My life changed when I joined Mesilla Valley Transportation in a big way. And one of them was them, of course, providing stability, giving me a peaceful state of mind, knowing that I could provide for my family, knowing that I could do what I do every single day without worries of, job security, in other words. And they actually helped me out a lot as well, as far as my daughter. She's 17. She wanted to get a first job in the summer. Marketing was able to go ahead and help me out, bring her in here as an internship over the summer, which she loved. She gained a lot of experience for her being her first job. Now she loves it. Now she wants to go to school for it and get a degree, so she's happy, and I'm happy. I would definitely recommend people to work here. Ever since I walked here the first day, it felt like a family-oriented work environment. Everyone's smiling, everyone's friendly, everyone talks to you like if they know you for years. So for sure, if I had to go ahead and tell someone, I would definitely recommend someone to work here at Mesilla Valley. My name's Josue Fierro. I'm a driver recruiter, and MVT changed my life.
A commercial with Josue. That's our most favorite internal recruiter.
You're a little biased, but
yeah,
I get it.
Just a little biased. Okay, so now we are going to have Dana put up the maps. Which one you want to put up first? Well, it doesn't matter. Bryce, if you would go ahead and put up whatever map you want on.
We're going to go to Division 430. That's out of Jacksonville, Florida. We are currently hiring drivers that live within a 75-mile radius of Jacksonville, Florida. This I call the stress-free division. Running I-10, get to avoid a lot of the bad weather, though this upcoming week may be a sign that that's not the case because we've got hurricanes in the area. However, if you live in Jacksonville, we're always interested in folks going along I-10 to Houston, then on down to Laredo, and then from Laredo going back towards Jacksonville. Takes approximately 4.5 days to run that loop. You get home, get a 34-hour reset, begin the process again. Really consistent home time, beautiful, very stress-free running area, and really consistent pay at anywhere between $1,000 to $1,400 per week. All no touch, vast majority drop and hook. Big customer on this, about 60% of this freight is going to be Lowe's. Lowe's, really strong customer with us, and they value what we do out of that market, which is why we picked up some additional business from Lowe's. So have an opportunity for 10 potential drivers. This is also a really good opportunity for teams. And so though we do have mainly solo drivers on this, teams can run 2 of these loops before getting home, basically in about the same amount of time, close to about 5 days at a time. So it allows the team great home time to get a couple days at home before running for about 5 days and coming back. Our teams on this are averaging anywhere between $3,500 to $4,000 a week. And again, very attractive. If you live in Jacksonville, you've probably had every recruiter under the sun trying to get you to go up to the Northeast or up to Atlanta. This is going to go along I-10. We do not go north out of Jacksonville. We are literally doing the Jacksonville market, maybe Valdosta, Georgia, and then from there going towards Houston, Laredo, and back on to Jacksonville. Very attractive division. Normally going to fly out to orientation out of Laredo, Texas, which gets you right in line with this particular division. Let's look at the next division.
Right. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Been a while since we talked about Division 220. Have current openings out of Salt Lake City, El Paso, Albuquerque. This is one of those higher paying divisions. You have the potential of getting into the 6-figure range with 2 years of experience. Run basically the Western 11, very set, engineered lanes with very specific customers, direct customers that we've been working with for multiple decades. So again, if you live out of Albuquerque or Salt Lake City, a lot of opportunities running Division 220 at present. Again, this is up to $106,000 a year as an experienced driver, $1,500 to $2,000 a week. A lot of opportunity, a lot of drop and hook opportunity, good length of haul, and a very consistent, steady customer base. Running some of the most scenic country in the country. You will see some of the best views of the mountains anywhere in the U.S. And again, one of the reasons you can get into that 6 figures, it is mountain driving, so it's not for everybody. If you want to stick to the flatlands, granted in Salt Lake City that may be a little difficult for you, but if you want to stick to the flatlands, those divisions pay significantly less. This will have you into that 6-figure range as long as you're ready to get out there and run. 7 to 8 days out, then you get your home time in place, great facilities. And even if you don't live in El Paso, it'll get you through the main office generally about once a week. So you're always going to be able to have that face-to-face interaction with your dispatcher as well. We have open door policy, and that's a genuine open door policy where you physically will get to shake your dispatcher's hand, talk to him or her, and work on the game plan for the following week. Let's go to the next division if you could, Vanna. And Division 100. We're specifically looking at El Paso. In particular, I'd take teams on this, though we do have solo opportunities out of El Paso. This is one of the divisions that, generally speaking, you're going to average about $1,400 to $1,500 a week. I will say we don't require it, but if you have your passport, that passport will allow us to take loads out of El Paso up to either the greater Toronto area or Montreal. On a team, that pays an extra $200 a load. So what ends up becoming a $3,500, $3,800 division per week easily starts to reach in that $4,000 range. With the addition of that passport, we're starting to see more and more of that opportunity. It's why we've talked on this show a lot about investing in yourself, be it with hazmat endorsement or a passport or fast card. Investing in yourself, this is one of those areas where we don't require it, but if you have that extra ability to take a load up into Canada, it means a lot more money for you in your pocket. Again, all no-touch freight. Majority of this is drop and hook. And again, when you go El Paso up to Toronto or Montreal, as an example, really nice length of haul on that, on top of the additional money related to it. So good length of haul, a lot of drop and hook when you do get to the customer. And again, it's one of those divisions I'll tell somebody it's not required, but the investment of your passport will make a sizable difference over the course of the year. Our perspective on it is that passport adds an extra $10,000 to $15,000 a year to your bottom line, which more than pays up what you paid for that passport.
That's for sure. I like that. I like the fact that we are starting to get more things for drivers that are willing to invest in themselves.
Absolutely. So we have a niche of that no-touch freight or that non-endorsement type freight. But with that said, the goal is to better yourself. And if you better yourself, we want to find opportunities to capitalize it. It's why I ask any driver we hire, do you have hazmat? Do you have a passport? It's not that I'm requiring it, but if you have it and we see our driver base has these things, we will look for those opportunities to get the absolute most for the driver in the long run, because they're going to end up staying with us.
Yeah, because I always tell drivers, you never know. First of all, you're a professional driver. These are the things that you should have, even if you don't have them immediately. Start in your mind knowing that these are the things that you want to invest in.
Yep.
Okay, so that's just period. But not just that, you never know, because times change. Companies need to diversify within their niche. And that's just a fact.
Yep.
You know, it's a part of staying alive, right? That's a
Bee Gees song. Unfortunately, I knew that right away.
So I knew it was something. So that's just a part of the game, being able to stay alive. So we want to be able to work with drivers that invest in themselves. That's part of helping out the company, and it goes back and forth. So definitely, if you are any of the drivers that fit that bill, give us a call. We have the recruiters standing by. We got Rachel, Raven, Nemmer, Deborah. So go ahead, give them a call at 281-968-3100, 281-968-3100, or go directly to the website at rigonwheels.com. So that's 281-968-3100, 281-968-3100. Remember, we have Raven, Nemmer, or Rachel ready to take your call immediately, and then any of the other recruiters will definitely be able to back them up and get you going ASAP. Yeah. So with MVT, they need you to have a minimum of 6 months experience and have a good, clean, and decent MVR and background.
Now, I will say this. There is an opportunity to take people with less than 6 months of experience that I want to share with the group. So let's say that you have a spouse, a relative that's new into trucking, just got out of school but needs to go with a trainer, but doesn't want to train with somebody they don't know. If you are an experienced driver with at least 18 months of experience, no tickets, no accidents in that 18 months, there's also an opportunity that you can train your spouse, your significant other, your friend, your family member. So keep in mind that you may have somebody that is not that experienced driver, but wants to be trained by you. If you have a safe background, safe, stable work history, we'll take both of you in that scenario as well. So you can work with Rig on Wheels, and if they present a candidate, hey, we have a driver that meets all these qualifications for you, and they want to train somebody, it's also an opportunity to get somebody into the truck with you that you enjoy running with. And it's hard. We have mentors that do a great job, but sometimes somebody just wants to be training with somebody that they know, that they've grown up with or lived with. So keep that in mind. If you know anybody that's getting into trucking, if they can get through school, it becomes an opportunity for you to train them right off the bat, and we will gladly welcome you into the MVT hole via Rig on Wheels.
That sounds good. I love that. Because that's a loophole.
Yep.
Definitely to get around things. For the person that has a lot the 18 months experience, they'll be making some good money, hands down, because they'll be considered a trainer. It is considered a team experience, but to be honest with you, it's also you being trained.
Yeah.
So that's a 2-for-1 right there.
Keep in mind, we have a bunch of other markets that we hire out of we're not necessarily mentioned this week in our hot jobs this week. Places like Phoenix and Portland and DFW and Houston and Nashville and a whole other bunch of them. Plus, on top of that, Rig on Wheels works with about 40 other trucking clients. So if MVT is the right fit for you, they're going to be able to get you into the front door. They essentially have the VIP pass into the company. But if you don't live in a market that MV hires out of, we are very origin and destination specific. There's a bunch of other clients that Rig on Wheels works with. So if you share what your wants, your needs are, and what your background is, the team on the Rig on Wheels side will go ahead and work to get you with the client that best fits those needs, so you can ultimately be successful. Instead of finding a job for the next 90 days, you'll ultimately find a job that you can call your career.
Sounds good. Well, what we're going to do is go to commercial. Bryce, why don't we go to the commercial of the truck driver appreciation quarterly appreciation, and then come back and do some questions. That'll
Mi
be
nombre
good.
es Carlos Vázquez. Tengo trabajando 3 años aproximadamente y somos B1 y andamos en territorio Estados Unidos. Lo que me gusta de MVT es que tiene buenos viajes, buenos camiones y muy buenas millas. Mi comunicación con el despacho es muy buena y todo eso, y siempre están a la orden del día. ¿Qué pienso del equipo de los camiones? Pues que están muy bien y les dan sus mantenimientos, sus PO y todo lo demás, alineación y balanceo, todo, cambio de llantas y excelente servicio. La compañía cada trimestre regala un auto para los operadores. Me motiva pues a crecer más como persona y pues para dar el 100, como dicen, para la compañía.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. We got some live questions. Bryce is going to actually stand in my ear because she's having some difficulties with her speaker. So we're going to just stand in my ear.
It adds to the suspense.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. First question. Do you track driver's scorecards? That would be you.
Yeah. We look at a number of factors, everything from MPGs on the truck, on time percentage. There's a number of factors that we go into it, that when a fleet manager communicates to their driver, they're able to clearly communicate to the driver, hey, you're on the top half of the drivers, the bottom half of the drivers. If it's the top half, what do we need to do to continue to encourage you and work with you to be successful in your career? If it's the bottom half, it often opens up training opportunities. And training does not necessarily mean from a disciplinary standpoint. It can often be, hey, are we providing you with the resources to be successful? Do we have you in the right division? Do we have you? One of the exercises that we're doing as an example is we're looking at our bottom 20% of drivers in terms of what they're making on a weekly basis, so we can be somewhat reflective. Are we setting up the drivers for success? Or are we ultimately hindering the drivers? It's those things that, as I've said, we're never afraid to say and ask the question, is our baby ugly? It can be somewhat hard to take criticism, especially self-induced criticism, but it's one of the things we look at ongoing here is A, ranking a driver where he's at he or she is versus their peers, and then B, if they're on the lower end, is there a training opportunity? Is there a lack of resources? Is some one-on-one individual attention that we need to offer? Most of the time, there are bad drivers, like there are in every profession. There's bad cops or bad teachers or bad firemen. Most of the time, that's not the case. Most of the time, it's really getting together and working out a game plan with that individual where you realize, okay, we can help each other here. We need to figure out this together. And that's harder. That takes some nuance and some time and some patience that a lot of carriers don't want to just go through that exercise because it's hard. It's hard to look at yourself in the mirror and go, can I do better? But we think that's extremely important from the driver's end as well as our end on the same coin in order to win in the long term.
It's kind of hard to look at yourself in the mirror and self-reflect.
It is.
Yeah, it is kind of hard.
It is.
It's important, but it's hard.
It is. And then the other challenge is we also fall into biases. So we remember what happened last week with this one time and this one scenario, which makes up our entire body of work.
Yeah.
Where we have almost 1,900 drivers, and each of those people are individuals. They are not one and the same. There's not a stereotype. There's, what driver 271 does versus driver 968. Well, one's named John and the other's Sarah.
Yeah.
They're not a number. They are individuals with their own life experiences and their own background. And you ultimately have to work, in this case, with John and Sarah, not driver 271 and 968.
Yeah, I agree. It gets to be hard.
Yeah.
It's important, but it's hard. So we do have time for one more question. And then if we have any other ones, we'll be able to table it. Or I can answer them as far as content during the week. But what is the next question, Bryce? I was looking down just in case she had texted to me. But what's the next question? What's our biggest challenges as a recruiter? For us, it would be when it comes to like right now, the culture switch. As far as drivers are understanding that times have changed. But it's to continue to let them know that the time is not going back, right? There is a new chief in town. And what I mean by that is companies, carriers, and shippers are demanding a professional driver. So much so that as us, Rig on Wheels, we don't want to take on a carrier that wants the bottom barrel type of driver, because we don't want to attract those drivers to our database anymore. And I'm just going to be honest with you, because the majority of the companies that we have are not looking for anything less than a B- driver, maybe a C+ driver. So if you are a driver that is less than a C+ driver, it's harder for us to get you a job now. And that's the honesty of it all. So if you are below a C+, you need to stick with the job you're with, so you can at least get that seniority. You have that longevity at that job, so you're not considered a job hopper. That right there will bring up your quality. Does that kind of answer that? Put it in as a carrier?
It does. I'll also point in the driver that is very one-dimensional in their approach. And what I mean by that is, if you go, I once made 75 cents a mile. That company lost the freight. What do you have that's 75 cents a mile or above?
Oh, yeah.
It's a horrible conversation to have, because you're looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's what you make per week. That is what matters. On a weekly basis, what do you make per week? Now, some of it may come from mileage. Some of it may be accessorial pay. You know, how do I get compensated on layover or detention? How reliable is the equipment? Am I gonna, if you don't pay a lot on layover, are you giving me equipment that I'm not going to get laid over very often? What percentage of your freight is direct shipper account versus broker? Because if it's broker, I know I'm doing a lot of live loads. So if it's broker freight and I pay 70 cents a mile, but I'm doing live load on everything and everything's taking 6 hours to unload, yeah, I'm making a really good living on a per mile basis, but I may be losing my hide on the live loads. So the conversation has to be is, tell me, what am I going to make per week? Now let's get into how I make that per week. If you come into that conversation of, I want 70 cents a mile and everything below that I don't even want to talk about, we don't live into that environment. The freight rates aren't there to support that kind of pay rate in most of these divisions and most of these shippers.
Yeah.
Secondly, you are literally just going, I'm going to say yes to whoever's highest on rate per mile. And that could be setting yourself up for failure. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to set you up for a job for 30 days. My reputation and ultimately how I'm judged internally is having you with us a year from now, 2 years from now. I'm not paid on a per driver basis. So in my world, my fiduciary interest is you joining us and staying with us, and then thereby being productive. And so I will tell any recruiter, let's say you're winning. Let's say you're talking to a driver and they go, hey, I'm probably coming to MVT because you give me the best rate per mile. I tell the recruiter, go back to the drawing board, because if that's what's leading us, that driver will eventually find somebody that pays a higher rate per mile. Like, that is not a driver that I can guarantee is coming into class next week, because all it takes is one phone call going, I'll pay 2 cents more per mile. That driver's not staying with us. He or she will find something they like differently. You've got to look at the bigger picture of, tell me, because when you pay your mortgage or your rent payment, you're not paying in miles. You don't get to pay your mortgage based off of 2,000 miles a week. You literally have to know, what am I getting paid per week? I can't emphasize enough. And that driver that I'm trying to recruit, when they start the conversation with, I have to make blank per mile, there's not a whole lot to discuss. I mean, you're not looking at us. We're not looking at you. We're just not going to be a match.
And one of the last things I do want to say is, on the third party end, and I bet you if I put 15 third party recruiting agencies on here, we'll be able to tell you, people that say they 75 cents a mile, when they say that they worked at that company 60 days or less.
Yep.
because they really never really got that. And
Yep.
that's a fact. So the reality is they never really reached that ever. To be honest with you, that's the reason why they're looking.
Yeah, and I'll word it this way. Rate per mile is part of the dynamic.
Mhm.
I about 15 years ago owned 2 trucks, and we did flatbed work. I had a couple Kenworths, and my drivers got 80 cents a mile.
Mhm.
They were doing flatbed. They only
Yes.
ran about 1,500 miles a
Yeah.
week. A lot of their stuff is they tarped and they chained.
Yeah.
Now my drivers make good money, and they'd be at about $1,800 a
Yeah.
week. It was really, and it was the conversation I'd have to have with those couple of drivers is, yes, you do get 80 cents a mile because I need the math to work for you to
Yeah.
make the right amount. It's a bit of a physically demanding job.
Right.
I didn't have turnover. My drivers liked the job, but true, they could go to the truck stop and brag. I get 80 cents
Yeah.
a mile.
Yeah. That's
Now,
a little different.
Most of your experienced drivers would go, hold on, what do you do?
Yeah.
And then the rest of the story would come out of, I do this, I do this, I do this.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing is anybody can go to a truck stop and tell you they make something per mile. If it sounds too good to be true,
It is too good to be
it's
true.
too good to be true. There's something about the story that they've not included in that story. So that fishing story where the fish was 3 feet long, what they didn't tell you is, they also came there with the fish from the store. So they aren't giving you the whole story.
Like I always tell a recruiter, if somebody says that, so why are you on the phone with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you here for? But you know what? We have come to the end of our time. This is our last Tuesday in September, guys. But we will be here on October 1st. That's crazy. October pumpkin time already. Where did 2024 go? Well, we do need it to go away so we can be in 2025.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Come on, 2025.
Yes. But we did say come on 2024 too. Remember I was saying that?
Yeah, we did say that. I'll be honest. At this stage right now, I'm just ready for November 6th.
Yeah, oh Jesus. Yes, I am. I really am. I'm done with everything like that. So I need everybody to be safe. We got a hurricane coming on up the east here. So for all you 95 people, be safe, very safe, please. And we'll see you next week, Tuesday, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Bye, guys.
Yeah. Bye.